Chairman of the National Securities and Stock Market Commission, Mr. Tymur Khromayev. He will tell you a bit about himself and what he'll do on this position, this post. He'll tell you about the new members of this commission, about the goals of the commission, and then you will be able to ask him anything. Thank you very much. If you allow me, I will take a couple of gulps, swallows of water, because it is very cold in our commission and it is very warm in here. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here and to tell you about the situation that we are in. I'm Tymur Khromayev. For the last 14 years, I've been engaged in a business on corporate finance market, and also I managed companies. And rather unexpectedly, but of course, with a huge part of desire, I and my newly appointed colleagues started to work in the new field that is very well known to us. We are all from the business, from financial companies, and that's why the Ukrainian market and the international and European market and global market, we know them well. Dmytro Tarabakin has joined us. He is a member of the commission and he will have his word later. Before this, I started my career at the Ministry of Finance of Ukraine in 1997. This coincided with the Asian crisis, so for the second time I've been drafted at the time when both in the world and in the country the situation is far from calm. You may say that I and Dmytro are people of the crisis, but there's a certain logic in this, and we think that this is the best acceptable time for the changes, radical changes that will influence our life over the forthcoming decades, and our experience shows that this is how it happens. As of today, the Ukrainian market, regrettably, is on the decline as a result of many reasons. We know many of them well as a result of the events that have been happening over 20 years and the last 18 months as well. While the global economies are finding their way out of recession and have some success in restoring their potential, we're still in the tail end of economic development, and of course there's a part of the problem of financial market in this. The financial market is not a instrument to attract investment of population and foreign investors in order to provide for the correct growth and dynamics. Taking into account the entire set of problems that we know well, the President has set a task for us to reform and completely integrate the Ukrainian market into the global market, to build the infrastructure in order to provide the future privatization and future pension reform, which will, of course, happen as soon as I think the geopolitical situation will stabilize. But we already have to start it, and we have started on Saturday. We have right away come to the Commission, and we are doing everything so that we, business people, integrate into state processes as soon as possible. This is complicated for us because this is a different mentality, but I'm sure that our team is very hardworking and very vigorous and very specific. The fight with corruption is one of the main tasks what we have to root out in order to raise the level of trust in the regulator. When we cut the roots of corruption, we will be able to raise the efficiency of the work of our commission and to provide for the level of trust for investors and those who invest. When they come to the entirely renewed market, they will be sure that their actions and their projects are protected from unpleasant surprises, from forced merger, from speculation. So our task is to raise the level of trust. This is in brief, and we'll be pleased to answer your questions. Maybe Dmytro has something to add. Yes, if you have introductory remarks. Yes, but I'll take some. In fact, what Tymur said, we really came to work as a team, and we have a very clear-cut understanding of where we have to go and where we have to come. We don't very well understand yet how shall we proceed, but we know where we should find ourselves. But I'd also like to tell you about some positive moments. Just now I went to my office and took my labor book from there, workbook from there, and it was pleasant to see that the project on double listing that I started to work for years ago, we have the first result with the Mironivka bread making combine in Ukraine. 4 years ago, everyone was saying, "What are you doing? This is a fantasy, a figment of your imagination." But now we see the results. Of course, we would like to see them within 4 months, not 4 years. But this tells us that if you set right aims, then in the end we come to them, and the integration processes are made like this. The issue about futures, hryvnia and dollar, they said that this is impossible in Ukraine and the National Bank will never allow this. But at the moment we have the third day of trade in this. Of course it is not a deal, but it is working. Soon we will also work in futures for euro and dollar, and great victories are composed of small victories. And I think that step by step, by introducing new products, quality products that will enjoy the trust from investors on the one hand, and on the other hand, this is the formation of the investment pool that we were talking about to the president, and the pension reform is a necessary precondition for the formation of an investment result, which will be the foundation for the Ukrainian market. Because the rule, the foreign investors say, why should we invest into your market if you do not invest in them? People should see that there are insiders, residents of this country who trust their institutions and instruments, that they invest money in this, and then foreign investors will come. And the story and the history that was here is already past. Only when you create qualitatively new approaches and instruments, we can return the investors that used to be here and then went away, or involve and attract new investors. We would like to be judged not by our history, what we did before, but we judged according to our real actions and achievements, and we will be grateful for any prompts and comments, because every one of us has their own vision, and transparency and the exchange of views is important for us to move forward correctly. Do we have questions, colleagues?
I have a question to Mr. Khromayev, and that is about the statements which were published on Saturday on the website of the President. It was mentioned that there will be some new approaches and new formats developed for regulating the market. Maybe you discussed it with the President. What could be new formats of regulation, without regulation, with partial regulation? So, what can you say? On Friday, the President clearly stated that there is the political will for all the actions which are needed to ensure the result in the nearest future. In this case, we can say that everything else is the product of imagination of all the members of the Commission. A week ago, many did not know that they will be working on that. Even though we've been in the same boat for a long time and we've known each other for a long time, but it's a pleasure that we met before we were appointed, and we found out that we all are one team of people who think alike and who are very hard working people. And we have belief, we have imagination, and we have a political will for any changes, and we have a carte blanche. And it's important to understand that it is not limited to Commission only. There should be changes which are different. Commission is not one body which will be making rules and live according to these rules. That means very close cooperation with the Cabinet of Ministers, the National Bank, Verkhovna Rada. And that is why the President has clearly given us a task. And I'm sure that in the nearest future, during 4 or 6 weeks, we'll be offering you certain structural elements of the vision which we will be implementing, and we will offer that for discussion by the participants of the market. Any other questions? You were talking about the team, but as far as we know, the regulator is missing one member. Two members are missing. Could you tell, maybe you know about future appointments, who and when will be appointed? And also, will there be any internal reorganization inside the Commission of managers of the middle level? There are 5 already, and that's enough for the quorum. That is enough to start the activities and to start making decisions, not to delay, not to slow down the work of the commissions, and so that there's no accumulation of what is to be done on a daily basis. Fundamental changes, including possible reforms of the Commission and reorganization of the Commission, will make these decisions based on the analysis which we will do in the nearest future. Our main principles are efficiency, transparency of the work of the Commission, the objectivity, and these are the basic grounds which will be implementing in our work. I'm sure that they will be approximately like us, either bald-headed or with beards. We'll be trying hard. You know, it's not so important for us who exactly this person will be, because taking into account the trend that we see, we believe that we will feel comfortable working with such a person. One more question. Could you tell us about what you think about such problems as depository reform? To what extent do you believe that reform was efficient? Do you have any plans on that? Secondly, about the stock market. Is it worth merging some stock market platforms or sites? To talk now about some specific actions which we'll be offering in talking about the depository or stock exchange, it's too early to say that. We first of all have to evaluate the whole situation. We cannot say that we are in the desert, and there are some basic elements of the market which are in place. We will assess what's there, and we will suggest the measures or the actions which will help us progress. Dmitry knows well the mechanisms and functioning of the stock market, of stock exchanges. He will tell you more about that. But I believe that the signal is very obvious. It is very important to understand, to agree on the model. There's a very good perspective in the result of the Russian crisis and global. There are some interesting people who have very good expert knowledge about how that was done in other countries. And if we do not know something, we will get together a very good team of advisors. We will invite some Ukrainian experts, and I talked preliminary to some Western companies who will help us correctly create the infrastructure which will be comfortable for investors. There are two major principles. First, there's this protection of property rights, and the second is risk management. These are two principal things that should be the foundation for everything. And I'm sure that we will find resources which will help us organize it all correctly.
We have another question to Mr. Tarabakin. You asked for the political support from the president for non-usual decisions. We talked about the pension reform. This is the main issue. Well, there are some others, but this is the basis around which everything has to evolve. Of course, we won't be able to act without the reform of court system. We can write a set of the best advice, but if we lack a working and just court system, then the risk management and the ownership rights won't work, and then the market won't work. My question goes to Tymur. You said that the president has set you a task to prepare for the privatization of state enterprises. Do you agree with the preliminary previous plans to sell 5% of shares? And also, how do you think, where is it better to conduct privatization, in Ukraine or on foreign stock grounds? Well, you have, I think, answered your own question. We have to create infrastructure in order for the privatization to become possible in Ukraine by way of using the stock market. We do not prepare companies. More than this, privatization should not happen for the sake of privatization. The companies have to be evaluated adequately, and we have to provide for the stock market functioning and for the transparency of its work, so that all the shares that the state sells are adequately provided for, and the investment and entrance of all the groups of investors is provided for. The decision on the privatization will be taken by the president and the government, and I think that in economy we should remove some disbalances, so that any privatization, especially of those enterprises that you are sort of interested in, like gas and energy industry enterprises, we need infrastructure in order to achieve this, because the deficit and the lack of balance that we now have should be removed, and the prices should be market prices. So you are in favor of privatization in Ukraine. You know, the market will provide us a possibility and opportunity. If we are able to integrate Ukraine into the global market, physically we will be here, but our markets, our companies will be elsewhere in the world, and any investor in the world will be able to invest in the success story that we will be able to tell. We are not talking about the address of registration. We are talking about the hub which accepts information from all over Ukraine or the world, and Ukrainian information spreads over the world. Is the existence is it still necessary to divide functions of the National Commission for Securities and the National Bank between these two bodies? I think it would be more correct to address this question to the head of the Commission and its members, but we will look at ourselves, asking ourselves whether we need some functions or maybe we need some other functions. We have to revise our activity from scratch from top to down, so maybe there will be changes in the functions of our commissions as well. We had the head of the National Commission today, and he also said that there will be audit. They will audit the functions and the composition of the National Commission. Thank you, Tymur. Thank you, Tymur. We wish you the success in your